25 airlines stop flying crash plane. It's all about aviation. Australia, Singapore, Malaysia and Oman join China and Indonesia in suspending use of Boeing 737 MAX 8 aircraft 2 days after 157 people were killed on such a plane during a flight from Addis Ababa to Nairobi. This story continues on page 9 of the Daily Nation this morning. Still on the front page of the Daily Nation, Jumwa defies Raila's call to apologize. All India MP laughs off suggestions by ODM that she should atone for her rebellion to avoid being kicked out. This story is tucked away on page 5 of the Daily Nation this morning. Let's see what we have on the front page of the Standard. Shock for men with children out of wedlock. Judge declares unconstitutional sections that give men leeway to accept or reject children born out of marriage and allows offspring's automatic inheritance of their father's properties. This story continues on page 3 of the Standard this morning. Let me just zoom out for you to see clearly how it looks this morning. That is what we have on the front page of the Standard today. Judges declare unconstitutional sections that give men leeway to accept or reject children born out of marriage and allows offspring's automatic inheritance of their father's properties. You can follow the story on page 3 of the Standard. Also still on the front page of the Standard, tragedy, the Boeing 737 plane crash aftermath. We can see here Nuruddin Abdul Khadir, who lost his mother and brother in the Ethiopian Airlines plane crash, is consoled by relatives at the Skylight Hotel in Addis Ababa yesterday. This is in Ethiopia. And this story continues on page 6. Addis air crash, not a single body for burial. It says, bad news, authorities report they are not yet ready to release bodies as the task of matching remains from crash scene to family members. DNA samples is very difficult. This is the story that you can follow on page 6 of the Standard this morning. Still on the front page of the Standard, civil servants, police, insurance cover stalls, rivalry between two giants firms over cover for 400,000 state employees heads to procurement tribunal, where hearing starts today. And even as we're looking at the security matters this morning, this also shall be part of our discussion here later with our panelists as well here on Standing on Guard. This is tucked away on page 5 of the Standard. Let's see what we have on the front page of the Star. DPP gets a 4.8 billion shillings prisons fraud files. Right, this is a prison scandal. Every day we're waking up to another scandal. And of course, this is also one of them. It says deal was to buy heavy military equipment without request from prisons. ESC Deputy CEO Michael Mubea confirms that files had been sent to Haji's office. This story is tucked away on page 4 and 5 of the Star this morning. And look at the devastation yesterday. Land grabbers behind toy market fire, claims Raila. And this is how it went down yesterday. We have traders here who were devastated after the fire raced down their stalls. These are the remains of toy market in Kibera after a fire gutted down the structures yesterday. You can follow the story also inside the Star this morning. Nyeri magistrate wants court to allow her to bury husband. Also Sonko's nominee for environment put to task of a D+ grade. Sonko's nominee for environment put to task of a D+ grade. You can follow the story on page 23 of the Star this morning. Presidential hopefuls camp in Muranga. This is on page 24 of the Star this morning. People Daily is up next, and this is what you're waking up to. Grim reality for plane crash king. This is what is on the front page of the People Daily. Grim reality for plane crash king. After a visit to the Ethiopian aircraft accident scene yesterday, families, friends were confirmed with actuality that they will have to wait for lengthy DNA procedures to identify bodies of victims. After a visit to the Ethiopian aircraft accident scene yesterday, families, friends were confronted with actuality or with the reality that they will have to wait for lengthy DNA procedures to identify bodies of victims. This story continues on page 4 of the People Daily this morning. Kenyans stand with brave MP Okoth's fight against cancer. They were actually sending messages of encouragement yesterday via Twitter The second-term legislator is undergoing treatment abroad. This story continues on page 2 of the People Daily today. You can follow that on page 2 of the People Daily this morning. Let's see what we have on the front page of Taifa Leo. And this is what is a splash today. Raila Ruto wapigania Jumwa. That is a story that you have also on the front page of Taifa Leo. Kinara wa ODM abadili kauli kuhusu mbunge wa Malindi baada ya naibu rais kumsuta. That story continues on page 2. Pastor Ng'ang'a atishia kudhuru mwanahabari ajigambia utajiri. That is a story on page 2 also of the Taifa Leo this morning. Let's move on and see what we have on the front page of the Business Daily. Chinese SGR firm offered 2.5 billion shillings Nairobi rail deal. China Road and Bridge Corporation, which built the standard gauge railway, on the verge of clinching single-sourced pact. The Chinese firm that built the multi-billion shillings standard gauge railway is set to clinch 2.5 billion shillings contract to refurbish the Nairobi commuter railway network in a single-source deal tabled before the cabinet. The Transport Secretary James Macharia wants the cabinet to approve the hiring of China Road and Bridge Corporation without subjecting it to competitive bidding, citing lack of local firms with required capacity to undertake the works. This story, you can follow it on page 4 of the Business Daily this morning. And you have the breakdown there of the 2.5 billion shillings in Nairobi commuter railway contract. They're all given here. I cannot, of course, list them or read them out to you, but you can grab a copy of the Business Daily this morning. Also, CMA withholds 458 million shillings insider trading, cash in 26 billion shillings. Kennel sale. The capital markets regulator has seized 458 million shillings gains that insider trading suspects stood to earn from the ongoing Kennel coal bill takeover, as shareholders of the oil marketing firm started receiving 26.35 billion shillings buyout cash. Also, that story continues on page 4 of the Business Daily. Legislation matters, and we can see President Uhuru Kenyatta signing 3 bills into law at State House yesterday. Looking on from right, Senator Speaker Kenneth Lusaka. Also, we have Senate Majority Leader Kipchumba Murkomen, Minority Leader James Orengo, and Solicitor General Kennedy Ogeto. You can see also that story continuing on page 2. One of the bills that was assented to by the President is the Energy Regulatory Bill that now is an act. You can follow that story inside the Business Daily. KRA targets gamblers' mobile payments as half-year tax falls short by 53 billion shillings. That story also on page 4 of the Business Daily. We cross the borders now to Tanzania, where we pick up the Citizen. Government plans to boost budget by 620 billion shillings is what is on the front page of the Citizen. Mpango unveils framework for 33.1 trillion shillings financial plan for 2019-2020, during which the government intends to secure or to source about 22.2 trillion shillings domestically. The story continues on page 3 of the Citizen. Also, delayed response costs down 116 billion shillings. That is what we have still on the front page of the Citizen. It said Tanzania is to pay a Japanese contractor, that is Konoike, 116 billion shillings after a court in the United States confirmed a decision by the International Court of Arbitration requiring Tanzania to settle outstanding payment on a terminated road construction contract. That story continues on page 2 of the Citizen this morning. Are voters being taken for a ride? That's the question there. You can follow the story inside the Citizen. New diplomatic move to mend ties between Kampala and Kigali. And we have bites here from President Kagame saying, quote unquote, nobody anyway can bring me to my knees. Absolutely not. And we have also Museveni also saying those, quote unquote, those who want to destabilize our country don't know our capacity. That story continues inside the Citizen this morning. Mwananchi is the Swahili version of the Citizen. Bajeti mpya, and we give it the figure there. That is 33 trillion shillings. You can follow the story also inside the Mwananchi this morning. In Rwanda, we have the New Times, and government ready to cede its stake in Simerwa is the splash. The government is in the process of withdrawing its investment in Rwanda's leading, we'll try and expand it to see, cement producer, Simerwa, with the timeline for the completion of the process set for end of March. That story continues on page 3 of the New Times if you're waking up in Rwanda. And we can see this is the Minister for Local Government, Anastasi Shiaka, speaking during a news conference on the 16th National Leadership Retreat, which concluded on Monday in Gabiro. Looking on also is Oliver Nduhungirehe, the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs and Corporations. You can follow that story on page 8 of the New Times this morning. Let's see what we have also on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. And this is what you're waking up to. And we can see a telling picture there. Mourners gathered at a memorial ceremony in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. That was on Monday for the Ethiopian Airlines crew members killed in the crash of a Boeing 737 MAX on Sunday. Shortly after takeoff, all 157 people aboard the plane died. And also, the Federal Aviation Authority holds off grounding Boeing planes after crash. It says the Federal Aviation Administration said on Monday it doesn't plan to ground Boeing company's 737 MAX planes despite concerns by other countries' passengers and airline employees after the model's second crash in less than 5 months. This investigation has just begun, and to date, we have not been provided data to draw any conclusion or take any actions, the FFA said in an update to airlines referring to Sunday's deadly Ethiopian Airlines crash. The agency said it expected by the end of April to mandate a software fix for an automated flight control system that played a central role in the first crash involving the plane model in Indonesia. And you have this story continuing inside the Wall Street Journal as well. Of course, time notwithstanding, this is what we have as the latest. And Huawei warning is sent to Berlin. US tells Germany intelligence sharing will decline if work is given to Chinese firms or Chinese firm, that is Huawei. And you can read the rest of the story also inside the Wall Street Journal this morning. Also in Brexit turmoil, financiers move assets out of UK. This is the Brexit block back right now with no clear path forward. The finance industry has shifted money and talent from London to Europe's competing financial centers. This story you can follow inside the Wall Street Journal. Telstra Musk fires back at SEC is another story you can follow inside the Wall Street Journal. I want to show you the editorial cartoons finally. This is what has been drawn by Stano inside the People Daily today. Wait for it. Hope it comes. And it's not acting yet. There you go. Not really this one. Let me just go for what Munene has drawn actually. This is in the Daily Nation. According to Munene, right, our man syndrome and the worn graft. Our man syndrome seems to be the biggest hurdle. Also, we have now Steno. Let me try and pick up that for you. This is the correct one. All right, I'll leave it for you to decipher this. This is a handshake, and of course, you can see the Deputy President affected there as far as the dam, you know, that particular debate or that particular row on the dam is ongoing. And will he fall inside the dam? This is what Stano has drawn for us. I want to show you also what we do have inside the Star. And this is what Victor has drawn for us today. You know, this has worked brilliantly in Kenya. That is a handshake. And of course, we know the diplomatic row between Uganda and Rwanda right now. And also, we had President Kenyatta trying also to mend, of course, the fences and to try to bridge this rift that is growing wider and wider between Rwanda and Uganda. Those are your editorial cartoons. Pick up the dailies as well for these riveting stories. The Daily Nation, The Standard, The Star, or whichever paper that really floats your boat. But for now, as always, let's put this horse into a full run by looking at the highlights. Supreme Court judges have 14 days to respond to bribery allegations. And the Supreme Verdict is out. Joseph Mutava can no longer serve as a judge. The UK Parliament's rejection of May's deal deepens Brexit divisions. Hello, good morning. I'm Debarl Inea. Now, the Judicial Service Commission has written to Justices Jackton Ojwang, Smokin Wanjala, Mohammed Ibrahim and Njoki Ndongo, giving them 14 days within which to respond to allegations of bribery raised in a petition by lawyer Omwanza Ombati. The JSC's move comes after a sitting to discuss the petition seeking to remove the 4 judges of the Supreme Court accused of corruption following their decision to uphold the election of Algeria Governor Mohamed Abdi. Interviews Silas Apollo starts off.
According to a communication from the Judicial Service Commission, the team today had its first sitting following allegations that 4 judges of the country's apex court had been bribed to deliver a biased ruling. The 4 have 14 days to respond to the allegations, and according to sources, the judges will be seeking quick resolution of the matter with the involvement of the DCI. Their petition was triggered by the Supreme Court ruling on the Wajir governorship election, pitting incumbent Mohamed Abdi and his predecessor Ahmed Abdullahi. Justices Jackton Ojwang, Mohammed Ibrahim, Smokin Wanjala and Njoki Ndongo, all 4 who upheld the election of Mohammed despite what his challenger says was overwhelming evidence that showed his win was rigged, are targeted. The 4 judges have been accused of taking bribe and failing to follow due process, including a failure to allow some evidence, thereby making a judgment that the petitioners termed as flawed. Justices Ndongo and Wanjala are specifically accused of engaging with the agents of the Wajir governor with the intention of receiving bribes running into tens of millions of shillings. The governor's election had been nullified by both the High Court and the Court of Appeal before the ruling was overturned by the Supreme Court in a majority ruling of 4 against 2. Chief Justice David Maraga and Justice Isaac Lenaola gave dissenting opinions. The petitioner alleged that sometimes in September 2018, one of the judges drove to Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, where an exchange of an equivalent of 75 million shillings in dollars was passed on to him by a lawyer at the parking lot. Another transaction is alleged to have taken place in early January, where a law firm was reportedly asked to sell a property urgently to raise 60 million shillings. The petitioners allege that the proceeds from the sale was topped up to 300 million shillings and transferred by the law firm to 4 different bank accounts held at a local Islamic bank. The petition claims that a sitting MP, Adan Kainan, and Chief Administrative Secretary Mohamed Elmi were involved in the scheme. Working with them, the petition claims, were 2 law firms. These monies, says the petition, were eventually given to the MP, who on a date between the week of 4th and 7th of February 2019 ensured it reached some judges. Another transaction involving 15 million shillings is said to have taken place on February 11th at between 3 and 4 p.m. at a local bank in Eastleigh. It is also alleged that a person connected to the saga has been trying to tamper with call records and erase the trail of communication that linked them to the judges, and has been to the VIP center of a telecommunication company more than 40 times between mid-January and end of February. The petition follows a call by Chief Justice David Maraga, who has challenged those accusing judges of corruption to file evidence to assist with investigations. If the current petition is deemed serious, a recommendation will be made to the President to form a tribunal to determine the suitability of the judges to remain in office. Silas Apollo, NTV.
And Joseph Mutava can no longer serve as a judge. The man known as the Patni judge failed to convince the Supreme Court that a tribunal had wrongly found him unfit to serve. The Supreme Court sided with the tribunal, which found that he was not fit to serve as a judicial officer, and recommended to President Uhuru Kenyatta to have him removed from the judiciary.
29 September 2016 is hereby dismissed. B, the tribunal's findings with regard to allegations 1 and 5 are hereby affirmed. Consequently, we hold that the petitioner's conduct amounted to gross misconduct, contrary to Article 168(1)(e) of the Constitution. And C, for the avoidance of doubt, the tribunal's recommendation to the President for the petitioner's removal from office under Article 168(7)(b) of the Constitution is also affirmed. We shall make no orders to costs. And this is a unanimous decision of PM Mwilu, Deputy Chief Justice, MK Ibrahim, Judge of the Court, JB Ojwang, Judge of the Court, Joe Kindongo, Judge of the Court, and myself.
Now, Transport Cabinet Secretary James Macharia has released the government's latest statement on the crash. He says the government, in consultation with Ethiopian Airlines, is making all necessary arrangements to facilitate travel of families and relatives of the airplane crash victims to Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. The CS adds that there is no Kenyan air operator that has in its fleet the affected aircraft type known as the Boeing B737 MAX. He added that no foreign carrier is currently operating the aircraft type in the Kenyan airspace. And still on that particular crash, 29-year-old senior captain Yared Tesema Getachew, the main pilot of the ill-fated Ethiopian Airlines flight, has been mourned as a kind, caring and hard-working young man. His family on Tuesday congregated for an Islamic send-off prayer in Mombasa, with his body yet to be retrieved. The government has assured family and relatives of victims of the air crash that they will be given transport to Ethiopia to help identify bodies of the loved ones.
I'm coming home to Nairobi. I've forgotten my phone, but we'll talk once I get there. These were the last words Captain Yared Getachew uttered to his mother before taking off in the ill-fated Ethiopian Airlines jet on Sunday. The 29-year-old dual Ethiopian-Kenyan national was the main pilot on flight E2302. Emotions ran high at the Moi International Airport in Mombasa as family members arrived for a send-off prayer for their kin in accordance with Islamic rituals. The prayer, known as Salatul Ghaib, is conducted upon a dead Muslim whose body is yet to be found. Getachew's uncle, Khalid Shapi, who is also the family spokesman, says his nephew has been working with Ethiopian Airlines from when he was a cadet to a senior captain. The Kenyan-born, who schooled at Oshwal High School in Nairobi, had worked for Ethiopian Airlines since July 2010. He then became a captain in November 2017 on the Boeing 737-800. Ethiopian Airlines Group CEO Tewolde Gebremariam had said Getachew was an experienced pilot, logging over 8,000 hours in flight and some 1,500 as the pilot in command. The senior pilot issued a distress call shortly after departure and was told to return, but all contact was lost shortly afterwards. The plane then ploughed into the ground at Hejere near Bishoftu, killing all on board. The Ethiopian Airlines described Getachew as a very accomplished and confident pilot with an impeccable record. Zainab Ismail, NTV.
Now, when the list of the people who had lost their lives in the Ethiopian Airlines plane crash was released, it had been stated that Kenya had lost 32 people. The list was revised to bring the total number of Kenyan fatalities to 33 when one of the victims was found to have been of dual citizenship. The family of Derek Luogi now wants the government to help them bury their kin here in Kenya. NTV's Brenda Wanga reports on the anguish this and other families are struggling with as they wait to receive the remains of their loved ones.
In Aliava Village, Kolomani constituency, Kakamega County, a family holds firmly onto the images of one of their own. Derek Luogi, aged 54 years, lost his life in the tragic plane crash that occurred over Ethiopian skies on the morning of Sunday the 10th this month. News of his demise catching the family, especially his ailing mother, flat-footed.
Alikuwa anakuja kunipeleka hospitali. Lakini vile tulikuwa bado tunangojea ndio tunasikia maneno ya ndege ambayo imeanguka. Tulifikiria ni ndege tu imeanguka huko, saa nyingine ni watu wengine. Lakini tulistuka kusikia Derek yako kwa hiyo ndege.
The late Derek was making one of his routine visits to his parent, a trip he had taken every 2 years since he settled in Canada and started a family there.
Derek has been assisting. Alikuwa anasaidia familia sana. Akikuja kila mtu anajua sukari iko.
The anxiety compounded by the uncertainty of the state of the remains of their brother, their son. But even if they are able to identify the remains of their kin, there is the added complication of his dual citizenship of both Kenya and Canada. At the time of his death, he was traveling on a Canadian passport.
Tuone hata ikiwa ni jivu ya mtoto wetu. Tuone hivyo ndio tutasadiki kweli mtoto wetu amekufa.
In Kipkelion West, the family of Kipngetich Rogonyi, a 32-year-old medical student, is grappling with a tragedy that has hit too close for comfort. The medical student was returning home from Ethiopia, where he had gone to install some hospital equipment.
Saidie jamii yetu wapelekwe huko Ethiopia, waanze kutambua mwili wake.
The family has been here before. In 2007, his brother died in the Kenya Airways crash that happened in Douala, Cameroon. This second airplane crash death has left his mother devastated, losing her only remaining breadwinner.
Hata sahi mama wakati alisikia hiyo ripoti ya kuanguka kwa mwanawe kwa ndege, alisirai baka sahi tuko hospitali.
In Mati Bay village, Lari, the family of the late Father George Mukua is beginning to plan for his last rites once his remains are brought home from Ethiopia. The 40-year-old priest with Marian Hill missionaries had been ordained to priesthood in 2017. The family only learnt of his demise yesterday.
Tulikuwa tumeongea na yeye last week, lakini nakumbuka tu akienda vile tulikuwa tumesimama na yeye huko nje akituambia sasa he's going and he will be coming back.
He hadn't informed his family that he was traveling that fateful Sunday. Just like Derek's and Kipngetich, Father George's family is still waiting to receive his remains so that they can lay him to rest. Brenda Wanga, NTV.
And grieving relatives, I should say, and friends of the victims killed in Sunday's tragic air disaster in Ethiopia have been arriving in Addis Ababa as the investigations into the accident continues. The Ethiopian Airlines aircraft departed Addis Ababa Bole International Airport at 8:38 local time and was scheduled to arrive here in the country in Nairobi at 10:25. However, the plane lost contact at 8:44 and then crashed near the town of Bishoftu. All the 149 passengers and 8 crew members on board the plane were confirmed dead. Michal Shimon flew in from Israel when he heard the news about his friend and colleague Avraham Matziglia, who was one of the 2 Israelis killed in the plane crash in Ethiopia on Sunday. The new Ethiopian Skylight Hotel in Addis Ababa is where many relatives have been put up by the airline, which mourners sitting in groups according to their nationalities awaiting further information. In another room in the hotel, Kenyan government officials have been consulting with the Ethiopian Minister of Transport to establish how the investigation is proceeding as it waits for the remains of its 32 citizens who perished in the crash. Rescue professionals from Israel Zaka organization, which only just concluded their rescue work in Brazil after the deadly dam collapse in Minas Gerais, is there also to follow this particular tragedy.
I'm urging the Ethiopian government to identify as much as possible the bodies, the pieces, and to bring Avi and Moshe to Israel as much as we can.
These are volunteers that are specifically professional people in finding body parts and connecting them to the personnel. They have been all over the world. This organization, Zaka, is volunteering all over the world. They just, not long ago, they came back from Brazil.
And Turkey's Transport Ministry has suspended all flights by Boeing 737 MAX 8 and MAX 9 models, according to Anadolu News Agency. joining several nations that have suspended the aircraft after a crash in Ethiopia killed 157 people. The state-owned news agency quoted the ministry as saying the decision was taken to ensure flight safety and that the flights were being suspended until further notice. The announcement came shortly after Turkish Airlines said it had suspended its 12 Boeing 737 MAX aircraft. Several Turkish Airlines flights were cancelled after the announcement, and 2 Boeing 737 MAX flying from Istanbul to London returned back to Atatürk Airport shortly after taking off. The crash in Ethiopia on Sunday was the second such disaster for the model in the past few months. Britain, Singapore and Australia, along with others, have suspended the aircraft. And the United Kingdom, France and Germany have banned also Boeing 737 MAX 8 planes from flying in their airspaces. This follows the March 10th Ethiopian Airlines crash, which killed all the 157 on board. This is the second aircraft of its type, as I mentioned, to crash in less than 5 months in different countries currently. Very interesting development, as also we can see from the Wall Street Journal. All these countries also, they've suspended the flights. Of course, the flights of Boeing 737. It's only in the U.S. This is what the Federal Aviation Authority is saying. It is holding off grounding Boeing planes after crash until further investigations. Just to read a bit of it, I read that for you, but if you're joining us this morning, just to apprise you on what they're saying, the Federal Aviation Administration said on Monday it doesn't plan to ground Boeing company's 737 planes despite concerns by other countries' passengers and airline employees after the model's second crash in less than 5 months. Quote unquote, this investigation has just begun, and to date we have not been provided data to draw any conclusions or take any actions, the Federal Aviation Authority said in an update to airlines, referring to Sunday's deadly Ethiopian Airlines crash. And you can follow this story on page 12 of the Wall Street Journal. So this is the only country right now that is still holding, according to the Federal Aviation Authority, until the investigations are done. Then conclusively, they can see whether they can suspend also the Boeing 737 MAX airplane in the U.S. on the table to continue with this particular discussion. We're eagerly waiting for Tom Kagwe to join us this morning and continue with the conversation. Also, you have that particular chance to drive the show with me. We'll put up our numbers momentarily for you to call in, ask questions, and share your contributions as well. But for now, allow me to introduce to you the CEO of Independent Medical Legal Unit. This is Peter Kama. Also, we do have with us as well, that is Dr. Warunga Simiyu, who is the CEO of Africa Security Center for and Security Strategies, to talk to us this morning about police reforms. He's been very keen following what is happening so far with this particular sector as well. So far, have we made any mileage? Do you see any discernible difference since we had all these undertakings from the post-election violence, and we had the Waki Commission, and we have the Kenya National Dialogue, which set up now the National Task Force under the Kibaki regime, and it's been going on and on and on. So we're here just to take, you know, a reflective tone on that particular note where we've made the highs and the lows as far as police reforms is concerned in this country. Good to join us this morning. Thank you, Peter Kama and Warunga Simiyu this morning. We're eagerly waiting, as I mentioned, Tom Kagwe, who was the former board member of IPOA, and also he's a political scientist as well. Let's continue with this. First of all, community policing in the country. It seems that we're always getting it and then we're losing it. So there's some flips and flops along the way, zigging and zagging. It has not been very linear. What are the challenges? What are the successes?
Thank you very much, Debarl, for having us this morning. Yes, we are discussing community policing, which is an integral part of the National Police Service of Kenya, as provided for under the Constitution, Article 244E, where the National Police Service is supposed to foster relationships with the broader society. And one of the ways then provided to do that is through the enactment of the National Police Service Act 2011, that provides that community policing will be the way for the service to foster that those relationships with society. It's also, you know, public participation is also one of the key principles and values of our Constitution at Article 10A, that provides that, you know, public participation in governance will be a critical component of, you know, embracing constitutional governance. So we are discussing a matter that we have given to ourselves as a country under the Constitution, but also under the various laws, that public participation will be critical in governance. Of course, you say that we have had, you know, hit and run around community policing. Yes, it's true. And one of the key reasons has been that there have been no clear guidelines for many years from the National Police Service on how to roll out community policing across the country. Number two, there has been confusion at the level of the executive, you know, the office of the president, with regard to how that is to be done. So you find community policing being rolled out at the same time you find Nyumba Kumi. And that created a lot of confusion. But things are getting clearer now. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Warunga, you've been on this journey as well. You can tell us, first of all, you've been also a committee member of the Nyumba Kumi initiative. And we've heard also the share of the Nyumba Kumi initiative, you know, expressing frustration. In terms of resources, it's not been enabled so far. How has this also been a tripping wire when it comes to shaking into place police reforms and community policing, for that matter?
I think, one, let me start with the resources. The first 2 years, when I was a member, I remember the government asked us to do budget, what we thought we could do in 2 years.
And the gentleman being Kagudi?
The chairman was Kagudi, yes. But the government now asked us. Yes, okay, the government. I remember Lelenku asking us to come up with a budget for the 2 years. And I led that process, and I remember we ended up asking for about 451 million. And the government gave us the money. So I think the initial 2 years, it was not about money. We started very well. We went to the countryside. But like he said, we had that issue of what is Nyumba Kumi, what is community policing. So we came up with some guidelines. But then, fortunately or unfortunately, I left before the 2 years were over. And the rest of the story I cannot explain because I was not part of the rest of the story.
Yes.
But I think the issue of finances, initially the government was very positive, and it was up to us to do what we needed to do. And I think we did something up to some level. Then after that, they bloated the team for another 3 years, but with the same chairman. So I can't speak for them. I'm sure Kiama, because he was one or another touching base with them as a member of the police reforms working group. But I think the issue was not resources. The issue was about doing what the government expected us to do. And for some reasons, I think one of the things I hear why they have not even been given an extension is because the government felt they did not do what was expected of them. And the results were not felt even after being there for 3 more years to do that. So Debarl have been around. I've been around on this. Kiama knows we started this thing in 2000 when I was in NCBDA. And I remember actually I was the head of community policing at NCBDA. We are the ones who created the famous RUAI, the one that President Kibaki actually went to launch. It is NCBDA that did that. It is a good concept. The biggest problem was at that time we were doing it outside the law.
The famous RUAI.
Yes,
for the interest
actually
of,
it is us.
RUAI what? For the interest of
RUAI Police Community Policing Station.
Fantastic.
It was the first model in this country that functioned, and the then president used it as a launch pad. So they used RUAI Police Station, launched community policing officially in the country. And it's a good concept. The biggest problem is that at that time, we were doing it outside the law. So it really depended on the benevolence of the Commissioner of Police or the then provincial police officer, whoever you are dealing with. And that's why when we started issues of police reforms, we said we must anchor this into law so that we don't have to be asking favors from the police. We just need to make it part and parcel of our policing regime. And that's why we lucky enough, we lobbied for it. It was anchored into law. And that is what has been happening from 2010 to now. Just to touch on what he said about confusion. Yes, because I know we were running some program together with him. And we used to go to the ground. He was in one side of the country, I was the other side of the country. And the biggest problem we used to get is, what is Nyumba Kumi and community policing nini? So it has taken them, I think, a bit of time because it's still part of that program, to bring Kenyans together to understand that Nyumba Kumi is just community policing. The name might confuse people, but it's just part and parcel of community policing, but at the lowest level. At the lowest level. So now that it is anchored in law, I think it's incumbent upon them now who are still in that field to continuously support the Kenyan people and ensure that the police do not lose the eye on the ball. Because the moment you disengage, it's very easy for the police to lose the eye on the ball because sometimes it is in their interest when the Kenyan people are not participating in this.
Thank you.
And therefore, I think that's where we are today. Of course, we shall speak more about it.
All right, we want to take a short break. When we come back, of course, Peter, you're going to tell us truly also your engagement with police reforms so far since 2002. And as you said, the government is not really particularly interested or intent on following or extending the Nyumba Kumi initiative. How so? But how do you, as an organization who has been championing through advocacy to make sure that community policing is taken into place, so far, what has been the challenges? And the confusion that is there, because we have Nyumba Kumi and they hear community policing, people cannot try and uncouple the two. But it says this is the lowest sort of cadre within the broader community policing as well. So we want to put these things into clarity for the benefit of our viewers to understand. So we take a short break right now. When we circle back, we continue with the discussion. Remember, you can head over to a Twitter handle. If you have questions, you can use the hashtag AMLiveNTV and you can paper your questions there. We shall also try and address them here with our panelists this morning. Don't go away. And community policing, it has been confusing for many citizens, but now we're here actually to crystallize this and many others as far as police reform is concerned. I just want to pick a tweet also from Samuel Oruto, who says the society is ready to foster a good relationship with the National Police Service, but the police are not ready for the fear they have stilled in people in weapon used to attract bribes from the public in fear of being arrested and charged. So keep on your tweets coming through, as we shall also be sampling some of them in the course of the program. Peter, yes, we promised to get clarity on this, and there are a raft of issues which are coming up since now 2002. But Nyumba Kumi initiative, community policing, Warunga says now Nyumba Kumi is a lower cut of it. The government is not particularly intent to see the extension of it. Where does this leave the community policing as it is right now?
Yeah, you see, what we've been advocating for a long time is the clarity on the government position on how to foster these relationships between police and society. And finally, I think the Ministry of Interior has settled on a position that community policing is the way to go, and that does not contradict the Nyumba Kumi initiative, because when you look at it, Nyumba Kumi is, as Warunga has said, is the lowest level of community policing. Yeah. But then you start with the community policing committee at the police station level under the station commander.
Yes.
So the station commander is the lead person there, working closely with the national government administration and all other stakeholders within the jurisdiction of the police station to form the community policing committee at the police station level. Then after that, the team that is appointed then as the community policing committee leads in setting up the forums, the community policing forums at the lower levels. And that's where Nyumba Kumi finds its pride of place, at the lowest level. And the lowest level can be in the unit that the people, together with the OCS, decide is appropriate for their own area. For example, we have been working on supporting the rollout of community policing in about 6 counties, and more so in 3 counties of Isiolo, Nakuru, and Nyeri. And what you find is the way the people in those counties have rolled out their initiatives is quite different because of the unique circumstances, the safety and security concerns of their own area, including the geographical uniqueness of each of those counties. And so what you find is that the even the boda taxi have become a community policing forum. So you find that community policing forums are based on the needs and the uniqueness of the places that they are being formed. So you find the community policing committee, for example, in Odhaya police station, saying we need to form community policing forums at lower levels, which is the villages. So they have quite a number of community policing forums covering those geographical areas. But then you find Nyumba Kumi taxi operators who were part of the problem when it comes to safety and security, because they had been infiltrated by criminal elements. And when they sat together with the community policing committee, and they are also members of that community policing committee, they decided, then let's also, under the leadership of the base traffic commander, let us have a boda taxis come together as forums, community policing forums. And because they are based in different areas all over the jurisdiction of the police station, they split themselves into small groups, each with its own committee, small forum or committee. And the overall boda forum under the police station. So there are various ways of forming this. And what is interesting and I think very useful is that people themselves are having dialogue and saying, this is what is useful for us, and this is not useful for us. So we have seen a lot of success in community policing once we were able to resolve the issue of which is the priority or which is the best way to go about addressing safety and security concerns of the people. So you find, for example, in Moiga police station in Nyeri, you have the chief, who retired a few weeks ago. You have the chief as the chairperson of the community policing committee, and the OCS as the secretary, as provided for in the law, that the OCS will always be the secretary. When you go to the police station, the police post or patrol base, you have the in charge of the patrol base of the police post is the secretary, who keeps the files of the community policing forum at the police post. Now you have members of Nyumba Kumi also included as members of the community policing committee at the police station level. You have business people, you have the youth, you have women, you have people with disabilities. So all manner of, based on the uniqueness of the situation. So I think that matter has now been settled, that we follow what is provided for in the law, but be as inclusive as possible. Yeah.
All right.
Now, I just want to mention also that the community policing discussion is happening at a time when the National Police Service is undergoing major transformation, but a good number of us are not noticing that transformation when you look at it. Because we are discussing community policing this morning in a context where the government has changed the policy on police housing from provision-based policy to allowance-based policy, so that police officers are now given allowances and they go and look for accommodation within the community. That's a huge transformation.
Yeah. We'll come to that. We'll come to that transformation because I think there are merits and demerits of it. People are saying, what about the security of the policemen themselves within the community? That is another, side to that particular discussion that we want to explore. But before we drill deeper on that, let's try and see, because we are looking at the reforms also broadly and in light of community policing. Since the Ransley report and they came up with recommendations, could you focus maybe on the legislation and reforms so far? Because also you as an organization have been heavily involved with this, and also Werunga has been in this panel. From your end, first of all, I think there are four major items. We had the legislative policy and institutional reforms. We had police accountability reforms. And I think Peter Kagwe will have been very ideal to talk and weigh in on this as a member of, former board member of IPOA, but he's not made it. And police professionalism reforms as well. Do we see any discernible difference from all these facets when you talk about administrative operational preparedness, logistical capacity, police tooling and kitting reforms as well? I think this also falls into that particular ambit that you're talking about, allowances and housing. But looking at all these anchors, could we peg our thoughts on them and broadly discuss how reforms and community policing is panning out?
I think when we need to see, the police themselves came up with the program documents. So we are the first program of police reforms between 2011 and 2015. Then we had the second one from 2015 to 2018. The first program of reform was meant to do institutional building.
Institutional building.
Yes. So they worked on everything that the law demanded of us to do. That's why we created IPOA, we created National Police Service Commission, we created Internal Affairs Unit. So all those that was required by law were achieved. At the same time, on matters of professionalism, the police and the community and his people, we call it the working group, and other Kenyans, worked on curriculum development. So they looked at the curriculum, they worked on what needs to be done, and there was a new curriculum that was developed. That was meant to now start professionalizing the police service. That one was achieved. Okay, the other one was about administration, welfare, and everything. There were 4 pillars. So most of it in the first program document were achieved, except one. That was the creation of the coroner's department. Because out of the 5 bills that were supposed to have been achieved, I think 4 were quickly done. We had problems with the 2. The one on the Private Security Industry Regulatory Board or Authority, and the second one was on coroner's bill. So as we speak now, all of them have now been established. I don't know whether coroner's department has come in.
The law has been
but
passed.
The implementation is still
the law has been passed.
A challenge.
But the implementation of that law has been a problem. Because the DCI, they want to continue holding on to homicide investigations, and yet that act is supposed to create a different department that deals on matters specifically on homicide. And that's why we're saying, because of these issues of homicide and murder in Kenya, let's have a department that has fully fledged instruments in terms of investigations, pathology, and all those things, DNA. Let it be an independent unit by itself, but working within the framework of national policing. So most of these things now have been achieved. But I think the biggest problem we have is that as I was leaving this program, I think a year ago, the IG had come up with what he was calling IG's community policing guidelines. But again, Debarl, you need to look at it. The IG is coming up with these guidelines, which I think were passed, and actually we started teaching people on it. But you see, like he said, we need to go back again and look at our national security architecture. It speaks about the county commissioners being the chairpersons of the Intelligence and Security Committee at the county level. And that also cascades down to the sub-county and to the chief. Now, when I went through those documents, and I remember, unfortunately, I did not record but we were going through with the DOs and the county commissioners. Of course, now they're called assistant county commissioners. We realized that the police guidelines did not give responsibility to assistant county commissioners. And yet they're the chairpersons in charge of Security and Intelligence Committee. So we went through and we realized that this thing was not fully integrated into our national security program. Now, that's about a year ago. I don't know whether things were changed. It's a better place to say that. But once I think the ministry was informed of this defect, I'm sure they started working on that. So Debarl, community policing is not now something that we need to ask the police to do. It is the law.
It is the law.
It is the law. And it is the alternative way of policing, because conventional policing, we realize that in this country it has not achieved much. So right now what we need to do, we must have strong organizations, like now the Police Reforms Working Group. Unfortunately, I keep on asking this man, who are these members? Because you see, you also need something we call institutional memory. If you want to achieve something amongst the group, you also need to have people who have seen these reforms grow. So that every time you make a step, it's important that you recall yourself where you started, what you've done, what you've not done, so that as you reach the apex of your reforms, you have a memory that can easily tell people, yes, we've achieved A, B, C, D. So to me, I think the police reforms are slowly coming into place. But again, like what he said on police officers living in the villages with other people and in estates, that is part of community policing. Because when you look at how it is done in other countries, police officers live with people. Now, people have been saying, what about the safety of police officers? I mean, if you're a good police officer, people will want to live with you. But if you're a bad police officer, the community will now change you. We were giving an example somewhere in Mombasa. You're a traffic police officer, you are now living in my estate. And every day I pass that place, you must ask 50 bob from me. How are you going to live with me in the estate? So there are good things about them going to the villages and the estates to stay with people, and there are some that are probably negative. But when we were asking this issue, we were told there are some who will be in the barracks. That's what happens, I think, in the military from time to time. So that you have a standby force that in the event of an emergency, you don't have to go looking for people in their houses. We have those who will be coming to stay in the barracks for about a week. They change over with others, but they come from their houses. Because now the houses in the barracks that they are going to use will be free. It will be part and parcel of the operational management system of the OCS. So that you come, you stay there for 2-3 days, you go back home, another team comes. So that at any one time, the OCS must have a team that is ready for operational capacity to be deployed in the event of any emergency in that police station area. Then I want to also to talk about Peter. I might have forgotten. Yeah. But I think the law says the chairperson of that community policing setup must be a civilian. Yeah. So he mentioned about a chief. And to me, I think that's not right, because the law is very clear that the chairperson must be a civilian.
Thank you. Let's leave it at that. Yes. Then, Peter, you tell us. It has to be a civilian. On an advocacy point of view, you've been very vocal on this. But we hardly see this happening. First of all, why is it not a civilian?
No, in most of the community policing committees that we have supported over the last 3 years, most of the chairpersons are civilians.
Most of them?
Yes, most of them, except that unique case where this chief was retiring and members felt that this was the chief who needed to be there. And we couldn't question that particular decision because the chief, yes, is a public servant, but he's a civilian. He's not a uniformed officer as such. It's not, you know, a police officer or, you know, a member of the security forces. And therefore, I think the community felt this person can lead as well. And they actually did very well to a large extent. But yes, the law says that they must be civilians and the secretary should be, you know, the OCS or the officer in charge of that particular jurisdiction. And it has worked quite well. Actually, we have seen that community policing has also begun to bring women to the front. Women involvement in security and safety matters has increased through community policing. Once they have been elected into these positions, half of the 6 community policing committees that we have across those 3 counties, the chairpersons are women. You know, and they're doing a wonderful job in terms of leading and it was resolving those security and safety concerns. But let me say this: when it comes to the involvement of the national government administration, what we call the provincial administration before, what we have found is that there has been a misunderstanding and between the county security and intelligence committee, which is purely government, 100% government, and the community policing committee.
Yes.
The community policing committee is not an operational security team. No, it's not. Their job is to promote and foster relationships between police and society, build trust, build confidence, ensure that the police officers in that particular area and the public in that particular area are able to work together in mapping out their safety and security concerns and identifying solutions to that. All right? Now, if there are matters operational that emerge from a community policing committee, what we have seen in the last 3 years is that that is now referred through the OCS to the various security and intelligence committees that are now operational, that are chaired now by the national government administration. As you said, the ACC, the Assistant County Commissioner, will chair the Security and Intelligence Committee at his or her level, and the same with the Deputy County Commissioner and the County Commissioner. So that structure remains. So if you go to any particular county, you'll find the County Security and Intelligence Committee is chaired by the County Commissioner. That has not changed. And there are no civilians who come into that space. That is purely a government operational function on security and safety. But they are informed, very well informed, by the deliberations of the community policing committees who refer those kind of matters that require security responses to the security intelligence committees. So there's no contradiction there as far as I'm concerned. Now, the challenge has been also in the implementation of this particular strategy, the tough wars between the various government institutions in terms of wanting to control, you know, any particular initiative that comes from the national government level. And therefore, part of the process of implementing community policing is also trying to bring together the various government institutions. And we are happy that now we have streamlined the police command, because even within the National Police Service, there were difficulties in terms of rolling out this. You would go to a particular county, and for you to be able to, for example, train police officers, you have to go and talk to the DCI head of county. You talk to the administration of police head of county. You talk to the Kenya Police Service head of county. Now, by the time you finish those 3, you're totally exhausted. Trying to bring them together and for them to send their officers to a training, you are talking to 3 people. Then you go and talk to the county commissioner. You know, so by the time you're done, and then you go and talk to the governor and his or her people. So, but now we have one county commander So things I expect it to be quite easy now.
So the data handover,
you have one regional commander.
Bureaucracy has been broken.
That has been, yes, that has been settled
okay.
now. So it will be clearer now for the county commander to be able to liaise with the county commissioner within the protocol in government to be able to propel this a bit faster than it has gone. So we do see this as, it's not an easy process because it's a change of culture, change of attitude, and change of practices as well.
Okay.
So it will take a bit of time, but we need a lot of people to support this, but also to insist, you know, gently insist, if there's a phrase like that, that all police officers, police leadership need to know that this is by the law.
Yes.
It is a legal mandate, it's a legal requirement, it's a legal obligation for them to implement this. So it's one of the deliverables. And we are happy that when the new regional commanders were appointed about 4 weeks ago, part of their induction was they were taken to Othaya Police Station, Community Policing Committee. And the 8 commanders spent a whole day discussing and sharing experiences with the Community Policing Committee in Othaya. And it was quite a wonderful day to spend with the 8 regional commanders. Them listening and asking questions and, you know, sharing also their own experiences, also their own concerns about this. I remember they asked about the funding, because community policing committees have not been funded by the national government as required by the National Police Service. So, so they were asking, how have you been able to operate without direct funding? You have to pay for your fare, you have to, you know, you pay for your meals. How do you manage this? And the community said, you know what? When we started and we saw the benefits, especially the bridging the gap between us and the police, that we can go to a police station now and we are welcomed. We are not asked, who are you, what do you want? We are welcomed and asked, what can I do for you? We realize that there's a benefit here for us in the long term. And therefore, we have invested our own personal resources into it as well. That I can take a boda taxi, get to the police station for the meeting, and go back and pay for myself. You know, and the regional commanders were surprised about that.
But Mr. Kiama, maybe food for thought. Now that we have the national government CDF as well, dedicated to projects within the constituencies, and we're talking about community policing, which is very pivotal when it comes to security. Why aren't we also coming up maybe with a legislation that you know, a certain portion should actually be dedicated to security, especially in implementing community policing down mashinani? Because I think it's a very salutary effort, and many people are saying, yes, this is a good move. But as you say, lack of resources, lack of funding, somebody shouldn't really be going out, you know, of his way to, you know, to his pocket in these challenging times economically. I think there's good stash of money that is given to the counties, and we've seen so many stalled projects. Why can't we dedicate that to a piece of it? Do we need a legislation, or how do we go about it?
No, you don't need a new legislation, because the National Police Service Act provides that the Inspector General will provide funds under the National Police budget to support community policing. Now,
but this fund is not flowing right now.
That has not been provided clearly. So, but what has happened is, which is a window of opportunity, is that beginning May last year, the National Police Service began providing AIE to the OCS, you know, the Authority to Incur Expenditure. So the OCS now has been given a budget. Now we do expect that AIE will include now the allowances for members of community policing committees.
For the benefit of my viewer who doesn't understand what AIE is,
yes.
What is
well, this is basically a kitty. It's basically an account. You know, an account within government where the public official accesses funding directly and is able to utilize to meet the needs of the office or the function that they are performing within government. So maybe Werunga can help.
Why haven't we been having this particular funds flowing down to the community level?
Let me answer you the AIE.
Yes, please.
The AIE, in short, is the Authority to Incur Expenses.
Okay.
So that gives the officer in charge some money for him to be able to incur expenses without necessarily going to his boss, because that money or allocation is now specifically given to that station. But I want to I want to say this, Peter, you know, you might be creating a problem by saying that the OCA should be giving allowances to members of community policing. That has been a major problem for a long time.
But there's a provision.
There's no provision.
In the Act.
No, I want to explain.
Please.
Yeah. There's no provision. What has happened now, initially the OCS had no authority to incur expenses, which means no police station was given money directly to do what they need to do in terms of operations.
Yeah.
But it does not specifically say this money can now be allocated to community policing. What we know, even what they are given, is not enough.
Yeah.
Number two, you must understand that community policing is a partnership. It's a partnership between the Kenyan people and the police service. And our understanding is that when you're talking about a partnership, you must bring something on the table. So what does the community bring on the table? What does the police bring on the table? The police will come with their mandate as a policing agency created by the law, mandated by the law, and given responsibilities to police the country. You come in as a Kenyan person with a civic duty to work with the police of this country to secure your area. Now, how does that work out? One, a partnership, you must bring something on the table. So this is what we normally tell them. You don't have money, the police might not have enough money. Let them create facilities for you. So have a place where you can be meeting, that will be created by the police. Have tea once in a while where the police can provide. But what are you bringing on board as a partner in this framework? So we told them, volunteer. We did some calculations, Debarl, when we were doing Nyumba Kumi. And in one country, in one county, with the several forums that we had created under the Nyumba Kumi framework, the bill was coming to several billions. And we knew straight away that this one the government cannot fund. So I think what we need to do is we were suggesting that these forums should be assisted to come up with income-generating activities. As a forum, you assist them to come up with something that can generate funds to assist them to run that framework. Because when you say that we are going to depend on the government, then it loses the meaning of a partnership. And that is what is explained in community policing. So I think we need to be a bit careful. I know Peter has been on this for some time now after some of us left. But I think it's important that Peter, with due respect, you see, when you start saying OCSs will start having problems, but my understanding is very clear. This is a partnership.
Yes. No, I agree.
People must bring something on the table, and with the little that the police have, they can now share with these people. So that is the essence of community policing. It's a partnership.
It's a partnership.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, I'm in agreement with that. I think I used the word allowances maybe out of context.
Yes.
What I meant is that the law provides that the expenses of the community policing structure will be taken care of by the Office of the Inspector General.
Yeah.
So there will be a budget for the expenses. Now, what is not provided is guidelines on what those expenses will be. So it is not people earning a salary as members of community policing committees, no.
Because
that will kill it.
A facilitation.
That will kill it. It's basically facilitation for the expenses of running that. For example, I'll give you an example. The Community Policing Committee is supposed to do outreach to the villages and towns and estates under the jurisdiction of the police station, and that was the OCS. Now, for them to travel from point A to point B, there will be expenses for that team, for 15.
Yes.
So that's what I meant. It's not like they're any salaries.
Issues of files,
exactly,
pens,
filing and everything.
All those things.
Yeah.
They require paper.
Precisely.
That one can be assisted by the station commander.
Precisely. Yeah.
But issues of money, I think it's not been catered for.
It's not been
because one, we also tell them this is voluntary. So don't come in thinking there's any money in this. You come in volunteer, but I still want you to take this one very seriously, Peter. How you can start some income generating. You know the way Kina Mama are empowered to start things too. So if you can assist these groups with some income generating activities that will make them continuously have some income to run their initiatives, that will get off the back of the government in terms of money. And I think that is one of the things we were recommending. If there's a way, for example, you go to a place like Meru, and Mirai is generating income, you might have to look at something, get some organization to assist them to start something small so that they have something that will assist them to have money as they run their programs. Now, the biggest problem, Debarl, with Kenya is the moment you also start a project like that, people will start owning it in the forum. Now, that creates another problem.
Okay.
So that's why there's been a big challenge about running out these programs, especially in the community, as opposed to the police itself.
Because of capacity and the resources.
Yeah.
But we're talking partnerships, and of course, this is a partnership between the civil society and also the government as well, and the broader, not just civil society, also the parachurch ministry, and anything that really falls, because security is for all of us anyway. But how also are we engaging other partners like the international community that, yes, they're particularly intent to make sure that, yes, community policing also is being enshrined or is being shaken into place within the wards? How do we approach the international donors also to support us?
The thing is that, as Warunga has said, community policing is about partnerships. Now, the first phase we have, according to our experience, is we have to invest a lot in building bridges between the police and the public, especially handling this issue of trust. Once you address the issue of trust and confidence, that the police can trust the people and the people can trust the police. One of the major issues that came up was actually the issue of the public giving information, and the information leaks, and the person who gave the information, is attacked or is put at lives under threats. That was a major issue in all the areas that we visited, and they had to handle that. So now what you see is the public saying, we have reported about 10 cases, and that information has never leaked. The public, the suspects don't know who reported. And that's quite strong, when you look at the previous situation.
Yes.
Number two is the behavior of the police on the ground. They say, since we started this partnership, we have seen the police begin to change their attitude towards us, but also the way they handle us when we meet. We have begun to see more patrols happening. Now, when it comes to other actors coming on board, CDF, international partners, I'm aware that there are ongoing discussions with some of the members of parliament. I think like in Nyeri town, I think there's a discussion going on between the security actors there and the member of parliament to see how they can support community policing as part of the CDF initiative. Because we have seen CDF supporting building of police stations. Now, so that there's nothing that rules out CDF supporting. For example, when community policing committees meet, I have one case of one of the slums in one of the counties where the community policing committee, together with the OCS and other security officers, were able to convince youth who are in crime to leave crime and change their lives. And the youth did that through the mentorship of the OCS and his team and the other members of this community policing committee. But then a gap emerged. The youth asked, we have left crime, what happens to us? Can you now support us with income generating activities? Now, the community policing committee might not have within their mandate the resources to do that. So they begin now doing the linkages. And I think that's point the chair of Nyumbakumi has been insisting, that community policing is beyond the security. It's also about the triggers for insecurity that we need to begin to handle. So it's not the symptoms only. It's also the causes, the root causes. And one of them is these youths are idle, they have no means of earning a livelihood, they easily get tempted to go into crime.
Thank you.
So there's a discussion around that. The international partners, what we've done we have had discussion with them. And we have identified, we have communicated to them the gaps that are there, especially the training of the rank and file within the police service. We have these guidelines. Very few police officers know about the community policing guidelines that were issued by the Inspector General. So the Inspector General did a very good job in bringing stakeholders together and developing the guidelines. But they have not been shared among the rank and file within the National Police Service across the country. So there's a huge gap in terms of information and knowledge on community policing. Leave alone even talking about the service standing orders that also begin to speak to a new way of policing, which very few police officers have been made aware of. you know, yet they are expected to abide by those new guidelines.
Thank you, thank you. So I'm thinking also critically, communications is very key when it comes to community policing. And I wonder, where is that interface where we have this community policing on the ground and the media? We're talking of local stations. Right now we have so many, you know, frequencies that, you know, the airing vernacular, you know, languages. We have vernacular stations, so to speak. But how are you harnessing also the power of the media in trying to inculcate security? When you have these alerts, I think that will be very pivotal, because I cannot hear you saying how you're also engaging media down on the ground, and what sort of guidelines and policies are there formulated, and if they are not, then is there a way forward so that we can try and see how do we engage media in trying to, you know, percolate that information?
No, I think it's an important challenge you are giving us. You saw during the unfortunate Dusit attack.
Yes.
The media immediately started talking about Nyumba Kumi. No.
Yes.
And even brought panelists to speak about Nyumba Kumi.
Nyumba Kumi.
Yet the country is going towards community policing, you know, in general, which is a more holistic approach at different levels. So yes, there's a gap in terms of media awareness, even of the legal provisions, and what the good work going on by various actors across the country to implement community policing. So I say yes, there's a gap, but appearing here today with my brother, and also
it's a good initiative.
Is a beginning of that journey with the media.
But we need to streamline it.
Yeah, we do
and structure it.
Yeah, we have a plan also to brief editors, you know, various editors in the media houses, so that they also are aware about as they do their editorial work. It's clear what the content is with regard to what the direction the country is taking. Tonight we are also having the documentary at 10 p.m. on NTV, showing you know, police officers and other stakeholders in community policing sharing their experience with the country as champions of community policing, to begin you know, and encouraging others to pick it up and telling them you know, this is not difficult. You just need to believe it, understand it, and run with it. Yeah.
Thank you.
But I think let me start with the international partners. You see, Debarl, most countries in Africa, including Kenya, even some of these good initiatives we are hearing are all paid for by international partners. So this is not even our money. You see a program like this one we are talking about, it's money from outside. What the police are doing, even from the IG, those booklets we are talking about, this service standing orders, they're all paid for by international partners. So I think it is up to us, because when these people come with these programs, they normally recruit people to work with them through designing the program. Because the program is not designed in Europe, for example, in Britain, or designed in France. They normally come here and pick Kenyans. Am I right? To design the program. So it's up to us Kenyans. You see, the biggest problem we have is that some of us go to these designing forums with personalized interests, so that whatever comes out, although it is for the country, but it ends up benefiting certain organizations. I'll give you an example of this very wonderful program that was brought in by the British, and was a member. I also participated in it. A lot of money, Debarl. But I agree with you that at the end of the day, there was no media element in that program. But under Nyumba Kumi, we said we shall go to the media. And I think what we did, we didn't come to the TV stations. We went to so many radio stations. And I think the chairman was so fond of vernacular stations until it got to a point where we told him this country must go the national way. So I think... So I think we did a lot, in fact, not a bit, in terms of getting to the media to tell Kenyans what we are talking about. But my worry at that time was we were discussing about Nyumba Kumi, not community policing. And that's why Peter will tell you, as we go to the villages now, people are so strong about Nyumba Kumi, and yet it is supposed to be part and parcel of this. So my thinking is very simple. Peter Kiama and his colleagues are still in this framework. I think it's incumbent upon you people to just looking at how you can come up with media strategies. And you don't have to go to media houses. You know, you can also pick champions in media houses and run with those officers. We have very good journalists who believe in what we do. We have very good people, anchors who believe in what you do. You don't have necessarily to go and pick a media house. And I think you've come up with a very good point, Debarl, so that now, as they spread the word, they must have the media with them as they move. I think it's very important because these funders will not decline an issue like that if it is going to reach the Kenyan people and the police themselves, because now we are talking about multi-agency so that they understand exactly what this community policing is all about.
Important because, yeah, so you're not really talking, you know, amongst yourself, but at least you're talking to, you know, the targeted community as well. Let's just get reactions also on social media. We have Andrew Franklin saying implement fully the National Police Service Act 2011 and establish a comprehensive reserve forces for members of the communities within which regular police are deployed. Reservists are the real face of community policing. Everything else is, well, forgive his crap he says. Ask a Marine. Franklin was a Marine, so yeah, he will always flaunt that. Right, and then also we have Samuel Orutwa. The society is ready to foster a good relationship with the National Police Service, but the police are not ready for the fear that they have still in people in weapon used to attract bribes. I think I read this. I'll try and retrieve what he has latest on that, but we will still make sure that yeah, your Twitter, of course, reactions are coming through. I want maybe to just also take this conversation to another angle altogether within the broader aspect of community policing. Right now, we've been talking about the private security sector owning guns. And I don't know how this fit into community policing as well, because I think, yes, if they have guns, they still will come to our community, to our estates with the guns as well. Have we also tried to come up with a broader, I don't know if it will be legislation or policy on how we can enrope this, or how will it be streamlining also with community policing? So we have private security guards with guns. How do they help within the broader aspect of community policing? Food for thought? Maybe we've not thought about it.
But let's answer Franklin. You know, he's our friend. You see, Marine is not everything, but it's good he served in the Marine. Reservists are part and parcel of community policing. And let me explain how. Peter will agree with me that when we roll out community policing, it has its own forms. If we are doing it in town, main town like Nairobi, city center, we call it sector policing. Why? Because the environment is different.
Yes.
We are talking of shops, we are talking of watchmen, we are talking, okay, guards, not watchmen. We are talking of taxi people. So we call it sector policing. And it will be rolled out with that context in mind. When you go to the rural places, it will be rolled out in the context of a rural setup, but with the same principles of community policing. When you go to pastoralist areas, it's going to be rolled out with the context of a pastoral community, but with the same principles, but putting in mind the fact that this is a pastoralist community. So it is not everywhere that you do the same thing and you say, this is what I'm going to do. The principles will remain the same, the thinking is the same, but you must contextualize your community policing framework. And that's why it is not just everywhere he's talking about reservists or whatever. That one can happen in West Pokot, in Turkana, and it is done, because that's how you know they are part and parcel of securing the communities within that framework. So we must understand that community policing is not just one. It is contextualized. And every time you roll it out, you must understand under what framework you are rolling community policing so that it fits in the context in which you want it to operate. I'll give you an example. One time, we did community policing on Koinange Street when I was in NCBDA. A very successful community policing, and it was a sector policing framework. So we put in Central Police Station, and I remember Japheth Kome at that time was a, what do you call it, OCPD. I remember one incident where I was called Debarl at 3 in the morning because the taxi fellows told me there are people who are entering this shop. I don't want to mention which shop. Within 2 seconds, I think 5 seconds, I was with the Kome on the phone. I told him, but OCPD, this is happening. Within 5 minutes, those guys were caught in the shop. the thieves. They did not even leave the shop. So I think it's important that as we speak about this, we must understand that we also know you don't do community policing as one. Every space and every place is contextualized.
Thank you, thank you.
And we know that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Peter Kema, you want to pick up on the guns? Because I don't have we have few minutes remaining, and that's very pivotal as well as we finish.
When you look at the Act, Private Security Industry Regulatory Act, I think there's a section, I'm not good in section, but I know what it says. It also gives them the mandate that the police will use them as part and parcel of community policing. So it's already in law.
It's already in law.
It's already in law. So even if they come with the guns, they are going to be part and parcel of community policing because the law says the Inspector General will use them as a part and parcel of community policing. So whatever framework they'll be having these guns, wherever they are, they will be part of community policing, but the guns will be controlled with the frameworks that they'll be given, even as they are being issued with those guns. So the law is also very clear. They are part and parcel of this. They are going to be used, and they'll also participate as partners in community policing. So the framework is up to now them who are still in the sector to see what the law says, what are the police doing, but it's clear they are part and parcel of this.
All right.
Yes.
Peter Kema, you want to weigh on that?
Yes, on the guns issue, it's a very sensitive area for the issuance of guns to security guards. I do recognize security guards as a critical pillar of security and safety for this country, including the reservists, across the country. But I would think that we are not yet ready for issuance of guns. So it's not a yes or no. I think it's an issue of how prepared are we to do that, because I have had experiences of security companies who even hire students who are in college to be security guards at night, and therefore the uniforms are placed in a particular store. So when you come in, you have no uniform that is yours. You come in the evening after class, you wear the uniform, and because and you are deployed at night. So there's a lot of exploitation within the private security sector. And that exploitation is dangerous for for this country. If then these are the people who we issue guns with, who are already under exploitation. Now we may want to consider whether are we issuing guns to the individual guards, or are we issuing guns to those who employ them, so that then those who employ them are the ones who are accountable to the OCS within the particular jurisdiction of a police station. So there are many issues that need to be cleared, but I don't think we are yet ready to issue guns wholesale to security guards, although they are a critical pillar of security and safety.
I think there's an important question here from Harriet Marjorie, and she's asking on Twitter, how can the community policing under the National Police Service Act be streamlined together with the County Policing Oversight Authority, especially on the issue of funding? Where we discussed that briefly, and then we shall look briefly also on what is on the front page of the Standard. Marjorie, Harriet, you want to take it, or
Yes, I think he'll also put something.
Briefly.
County Policing Authority is supposed to be an authority that has only two, I think, responsibilities. Prioritization of insecurity issues in the county, and where the governor is the chairman of that authority, and they work in tandem with the National Security Intelligence Committee. So what these people, who are supposed to be 9 in number, they discuss and then share with the National Security Intelligence Committee for them to implement what the county feels are their priorities in terms of insecurity. Now, what is lacking is how this CPA is going to work with the community policing and at the same time work with the National Security Intelligence Committee. Because if the CPA is working with the County Intelligence Security Committee, and the National Police, the Community Policing Forum works through the police, then the only way they're going to link up is this county commander who sits in the CPA as a member. Is the one who will be sharing what the forums have given him, discuss with the governor under the CPA framework, and share with those details with the County Security and Intelligence Committee. That is how they are going to link up. Yes.
I think his observation is right. The only problem has been the tussle between national government and county governments. Otherwise, the County Policing Authority is by law. It's supposed to be implemented, the National Police Service Act. But this tussle and suspicion between national and county government levels has rendered this CPA a victim.
Yes.
You know,
up
of
to
that
now.
tough war. But that's why the CS Interior has not issued the regulations to operationalize the counter policing authority. But we do feel that the time is ripe now for us to go to that other level, to operationalize the counter policing authority. It will be critical in terms of mapping the security challenges within the county. And also bringing on the governor's executive arm of the county to provide support to security agencies.
Right.
Yeah, and it's not operational, so I do not see a big risk.
All right, so we can look at the standard briefly before we wind up the show. And we have this civil servants police insurance cover stalls that is on the front page of a standard today. Rivalry between giant firms over cover for 400,000 state employees heads to procurement tribunal, where hearing starts today. And the story continues on page 5 of the standard. This is all we're talking about the insurance, which I think under also the regime of now is a retired IG, the immediate retired IG. This is Joseph Boynot. We've seen so many reforms. Insurance is one of them for the police. House allowance that you're talking about as well. But also within the insurance sector, now we have the hawks and the vultures now who are hovering over this because they know this is such a big sector, and we know police is a large constituency where you can rake in a lot of money. How will this be a tripping wire in terms of shaking into place? I don't know, this is not really right up your alley.
No. I mean,
but you can actually comment
no.
on it.
You look at it in this country. I mean, John Githongo has clearly spoken and said, if you want to see corruption, go to security-related contracts.
Yes.
Yeah, that's where it sits. That's where you know corruption squarely sits.
Yes.
But my point here is that even as we demand quality service and accountability for the national police officers, we do also need to recognize that they are professionals in their own right. And therefore, we have to treat them as professionals, including ensuring that their welfare, like insurance, is not subject to these cartels who are hovering all over trying to you know, grab public money. We have to protect that. Yeah. Sorry, as a matter of priority, we have to defend the welfare and capacity of police officers. And one of that aspects is their medical and life insurance, which is by right.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Not a favor. To
all right. Yeah. We're supposed to be winding up, but briefly, we have...
I think this insurance thing, even the previous one had issues. Officers were being deducted money on this insurance. For 6 months, they could not access a hospital because this insurance had problems. So I totally concur with Peter that we must remove police officers from the shenanigans of the civil service. We know, yes, they are civil police, but we must give them special treatment on matters like insurance, because the first one was a problem. Now they are lacking one because of cartels. I think we must, as a country, stop these shenanigans with our police officers and give them what they rightfully deserve and they should have.
All right.
Yes.
All right, the shenanigans I've heard this morning, I hope. And we have George Ondeki, as we're finally winding up, saying the argument by Dr. Murunga on meeting community policing committee expenses through income-generating activities has turned these committees extortionist. In my area, they move from house to house or business premises asking to be facilitated because we sleep soundly. And he puts that particular sleep in quotes there, we sleep soundly. So the initiative is a salutary one, but at the other hand also, or on the other hand, we find people taking advantage of that. Also, Don Santo say there will be, therefore it will be very difficult, though not impossible, for the police to integrate the community if these issues are not well managed. And I think he's put those issues there, continual behavior by police to demand and sometimes threaten the public for a bribe without being reminded of a higher authority that upholds integrity. It is also a cancer in this nation. Robert says, why can't we borrow from Uganda? They've had guards with guns for the longest time without any issues of gross misconduct. How do they do it? This is what he says. And finally, Jacob Abere Mtalala says, to realize quality police reforms and community policing requires hybrid approach. Rolling it out also varies from regions. Example, Mandera County approach may not be like the one in Kakamega. Witness protection laws also be enhanced. And those are your comments as well. I want to thank Peter Kiama, who is Executive Director of Independent Medical Legal Unit, and also Dr. Simi Werunga, who is the CEO of he's the director of the East African Security Studies. Thank you for coming through this morning. We really do appreciate. And this particular documentary will be running, just to give you a snippet of it, a slice of it in the evening. Make sure you tune in after the news, right? And you'll be seeing this particular documentary on community policing that has been prepared by the Independent Medical Legal Unit. So make sure you tune in to follow the story of community development. What is it all about? That is a slice of it. I appreciate you and the cogent discussion we've had this morning. Thank you for your valid company, also for your reactions on Twitter. We really do appreciate also those good questions.